We're going to pick up in the book of Daniel. We've started looking at Daniel's visions. At first in Daniel, he interpreted two other visions that weren't his, and then we looked at chapter 7, where he has his first vision. And it's amazing how all of these visions pertain basically to the end times. Now, some of them start in history around the time he's at, and they take you from that point, but they all seem to resolve and blend into the end time prophecies. And Daniel is a book where we get a lot of our language, even in the New Testament, for dealing with end time scenarios. Somebody asked me just the other day, why would you spend so much time in end times? What does it matter? And I don't know. I don't know all the answers to that, but God apparently thought it was important. About 250 chapters in the Bible pertain to this period of time, either in part or in whole. And now, if you think of that, there's only 260 chapters in the New Testament. So there's quite a bit of information given to this time over and over again. And I think one thing about Daniel is if we really understand Daniel, I think it will be a real help for those that are living in those end times. It's like there's so many really specific dates, time periods, information, that as things are unfolding before your eyes at the end of the age, I think you can look in Daniel and say, oh yeah, and this is next, and this is what's happening, and this is how long. So I think, Daniel, it later talks in here about those who have understanding, and wisdom will lead many to righteousness. And I think it's important for us in these days to learn this. Why? I guess just so we're prepared and we know what's coming, and we're not misled in some way. We have this information, and it's really specific. So anyway, we're getting to Daniel chapter 8 here, and Daniel gives the time frame on this. He says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously. And it's important here, I think, even that he names that, because some people would say, even today, some scholars would say, well, Daniel wasn't written during Daniel's time. Somebody else wrote it under another name, wrote it under Daniel's name. And, if that's the case, then this isn't the Word of God. Because if that's the case, then this is a lie. It didn't happen in the 3rd year of Belshazzar's reign. It happened some other time and some other. So I just believe Daniel had this dream, had this vision. It's nothing to God to tell the end from the beginning. He can go and tell you what the end's going to be from the beginning. It's nothing for him. He doesn't look at time in a linear fashion like we do. As far as my understanding, I'm not God, and I don't know. But anyway, he seems to be able to see it all like we're looking at it in a movie as it's being played out. He's looking at it from one end to the other, and he sees the whole thing. He's not limited by time like we are. So here, it's no problem for him to declare those things which are going to be. In fact, as we look through the scriptures, that's one of the claims of the Bible, and one of the claims that God is the God who He says He is, because He tells you the end from the beginning. He can start at the beginning and tell you what it's going to look like at the end. So, but in Daniel 8, we see this vision of a ram and a goat. This ram's coming across the land, and this goat comes up, and it's got 2 horns. One's longer than the other, and the goat crashes into the ram and destroys him. But the male goat, it says, magnifies himself. But in verse 8 it says, but as soon as he was mighty, the large horn was broken, and in its place there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. And most, I think, Bible scholars, interpreters would say that this is relating to Alexander the Great. And he, once he did gain power quickly, he was the large horn on this goat that was broken. And then those that took authority after him, they were scattered to the 4 winds of the earth. There was like 4 different kingdoms. Some would say there were 5 different leaders in those kingdoms. But at least they went to the 4 different corners of the earth. And so a lot of that would just look at, that's about Alexander the Great and the Empire of Greece that kind of covered this area of the world. So, most of these prophecies, what they're concerned about is these are all starting in the land of Babylon. They're all being seen in the land of Babylon. Our modern day, maybe if we're looking, Persia would be Iran. We're looking in the Iraq-Iran area and a lot of these things. And so it's concerned about that area of the world, and it's concerned about Jerusalem. This is a Middle Eastern view of history, And that's what God, because God is working, revealing himself through his interactions with a people group that he chose that were the line of Abraham. And so that's where these people end up. So they're captive in this land, and Daniel begins to have these visions. In the next part, in chapter 8, verses 9 through 14, it says, "And out of them came forth a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the land, and toward the east, and toward the beautiful land." Now, the beautiful land is usually referring to Israel. "And it grew up to the host of heaven, and caused some of the stars to fall to the earth, and it trampled them down. It even magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. Now, on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn, along with the regular sacrifice, and it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, 'How long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply? While the transgression causes horror, so as to allow both the holy place and the host to be trampled.' And he said to me, 'For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored.'" Here's one of those specific dates that's given. Some people would relate this to things regarding Alexander the Great, following up with Antiochus Epiphanes. And a lot of the things in this seem to relate to Antiochus Epiphanes, but they only are more of a prototype because he didn't do some of the things that we'll see come along later. I don't think he was involved in throwing the stars to fall to the earth, which would be basically relating to angelic host. But anyway, what we see here is this date, 2,300 evenings and mornings, and the holy place will be properly restored. As we look on, you put all this together, and it looks like from the book of Daniel, we believe that there's possibly going to be 7 years at the end of the age where there'll be a covenant made with the people, with Israel, and it'll be broken in the middle. But even here, it says 2,300 days, morning and evening, for this holy place to be properly restored. And that looks like you'd have maybe a 7-year period starts that goes in about that would be 2,520 days. Well, so about 120 days into it, you see that the sacrifices begin. And then we're going to see that it takes, there's these different things that happen. There's going to be a time when the sacrifices are stopped. There's going to be a time when the restoration fully comes. And here he's speaking, it's going to be 2,300 days. And in the period of those 2,300 days, the sacrifices stop, and then they're restored again. They're started, and then they're stopped, and then at the end of the time, the temple is restored. So it gives us a very specific time frame there. So we go into this, and we're looking at, there's an interpretation to this vision. Verse 19, it ends with this, "And he said, Behold, I'm going to let you know what will occur at the final period of the indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end." So specifically, it keeps telling us, it'll tell us throughout the book of Daniel several times, this is pertaining to the time of the end. The thing that gets a little confusing is that some of it starts with their present time, shows you what's going to happen right after that, and then it bleeds into the end times. And sometimes the transition is hard to see when it goes from one to the other. So you go on in chapter 8, it talks about the identity of the ram, which is Media and Persia, the identity of the goat, which is the kingdom of Greece, or Yavan, because Greece, I don't think, was named specifically in scriptures like that. But there's these principalities from these areas, and we'll see they're important throughout Scripture, and they keep on rising up. One would be this over Persia, Media Persia. That would be like today's modern Iran, and the goat over Greece. Today, it would deal more with not only Greece, but like what we call Asia Minor in that time, which would be more in the area of Turkey. And we see that there's continual conflict between this Iran and Turkey. They're both rising up. Their principalities rising for power, and that's something that we should be aware of even in these days. Those principalities are still there. They've been there from the beginning. They haven't changed. The people groups have changed maybe a little bit, but those principalities are still probably in contention with each other, and we'll see that maybe even play out in these days that we live now.